Alrighty. So what are the main kind of questions?
So probably, I understand the process of like discovery, we're grouping strategy and sales closing. That makes sense. But probably the most important metrics to a sales manager, and then we can dive into how they will be calculated, because from everything that we're saying, probably looking at just a calendar view probably does a good job of that.
Yep.
I've got total number of meeting types.
Yep.
So discovery or sales closing. The show up rate, which obviously is, if you're looking at a single week, it's progressing over time.
Yep.
So that fluctuates quite a lot. Closing rate, number of closed deals over completed sales closing calls.
Yeah, so I guess if you do like, so the close rate is going to be in a percentage, right? And it's going to be, that one is going to be like calls held, right?
Right, okay, so, and is
So there's two, because calls held over closed deals, right?
Yeah.
Now that's closing calls held.
Yeah, not
right?
Excluding discovery.
No, yes, exactly, right? So, but you got the held because that's ones that have shown up.
Oh, held means shown up.
You can say held, turned up, whatever it is you want, right? Because scheduled to close is, I guess, probably a better overall metric, because it like takes in, like you still want to know that, because that's going to be like skill based, but also some of those other factors that we talked about where it's like lollygagging only the best people through.
Yeah.
So scheduled to close is going to be like booked. So it's like, say closing calls booked, right? To closed.
Over closed, yeah.
But it's not going to take into account if half of them didn't turn up.
Yeah.
So with the same stats, you'd have 50 and 25.
Yeah.
Right? But this one is sort of probably better for the manager, because like it's going to give overall efficacy, because
yeah, it's building that broader context, because you're not looking at a single metric. It's like, what do all the metrics say?
yeah. And so this has to take into account like, you know, this, again, this is just the booked over the actual closed. This is the held, right? So they're going to tell you different things. Like if that's low and that's high, that means they're not showing up, which you'd see in the no-show rates anyway, but it sort of gives you a more accurate indication of to the overall efficacy, because like your revenue per book call, right, is taken into account the total book.
Yeah, so that's another one that I'd love to just dive in a little bit deeper, is those monetary metrics and where they come from for a sales rep and a sales manager.
Yeah. So when you're saying revenue per book call, you're not going to take into account the discovery calls.
Yep. Yes.
Right, because discovery calls are acting as like a, one, not everyone's going to do them, but two, like I think I remember I said last week, so you've got kind of like the two forms. You've got the this and you've got the this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in this one, you're pushing them through, right? So you're going to have, and then you're going to push them out essentially, right? So in this case, the discovery call is acting as like the liver of the sales process, right? It's the filtration mechanism, because the marketing here and the sales here, like you're kind of ramping everyone through.
Yeah.
Whereas out here, you're pushing them out, right? Get out. And so like realistically, like the discovery call, you don't even need it, because you're ramping everybody out. So that would just be a straight sales call.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the marketing is acting as that filtration system, you know, and in the examples that I sent you, it's that application. You know, there's the application funnel where it has like the if this then that.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're going to either end up seeing this or seeing this.
Yeah.
So like if I might have one where I'm running both, the people who like answer all my questions perfectly, they're going to go straight through to a sales call, and then I'm going to try and sell everybody that's there.
In the discovery call.
No, well, so like if I'm disqualifying everybody out, I'm going to have a shorter sales process. So that would just be a sales call, right? Yeah. Straight away. And then I'm just going to try and sell everybody, right? But if the marketing is not doing that and we're going more of a wide approach, then I'm going to put them into a discovery hole here, and then that's going to be used to push everybody out. There'll be a sales call here, and then we end up with the money over here. Yeah. But you know what I mean? It really just depends on the methodology, and you might have both running simultaneously. Some might have discovery calls on, some might, depending on where the marketing's coming from.
Mm-hmm. And that's all really clear. And so who is setting that discovery versus sales, like that top or that bottom way? Who is deciding that?
Well, it'll be like they're going to come in on a different marketing calendar.
Yeah.
Right? So they come in, they ask 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. Depending how they answer this one, right? It's going to be there, just to say it's really easy. This one is like, how much money do you have to invest? And it's like 0 to 5K and 5K plus, right? That's going to be like a conditional logic. Yeah. They might go straight to a discovery call. They might go straight to a sales call. Yeah. Because we've identified, well, we don't need to go through that extra filtering step. Yeah. These people do the discovery call, go to their sales call, then they buy. These people just buy. Yeah. Right? So we do it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then like that's not anything Redbase has to worry about because the person's just gonna come in.
It's just coming in. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Although like it would like that's where like if they are doing both, that's where like having aggregate number of discovery calls and aggregate number of sales calls doesn't work because they're gonna skip that step.
Yeah.
But that's less likely.
Yeah.
So like that might be version 1.1 where they do all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or maybe you can filter out people that have done a discovery call and a sales call. So you can see the close rate on the people who just went straight here and the close rate on people who did this, right?
Yeah.
So you probably need to be able to filter it, like what they've done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Per person and at a team level, right?
Well, I would say not per person. You just want to be able to go like, because what you don't want to do is see, because otherwise you might end up having 110% of people, right? Because let's just say 100 people book a sales call direct and 50 people book discovery calls.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the pass-through rate, right? And if you, let's say it's 25 people, but let's just say that now there's 125 sales calls. So if you go and do your discovery call to sales call rate, do you know what I mean? All the math's fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So you'd have to be able to take them out.
That makes sense. So when we were talking earlier around pass-through rates,
Yeah.
it's not something you need on a per client or customer basis. You can have an aggregate view of that, right? Or like of the discovery call set, how many pass through.
Yes.
And would you want that at a per sales rep?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Big time. Because again, that's going to tell you like, you know, because if they have it goes discovery and then sales call, and then they're going to like, you know, they're going to do whatever they're going to do there.
Yeah.
But there's also these, right? So disqualify, show, no show, cancellation, reschedule, whatever. But you know, if it's 100 here, and then from there, you know, it's 25, 25, 25, 25. It's like sweet 25 have passed through.
Yeah.
So now we've got bang 25,
Yeah.
and then it's like, well, 20 of them show up, right? And then we've got, well, you know, 10 of them close. So it's a 50% close rate and 80% show rate, right? So that would be like a pass through of 25%. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Assuming 100 showed up,
Yeah.
right? Because it might be 120 and then they show, you know what I mean? And that's booked.
Yeah. And
Book,
at what
show,
point
pass through.
do we, because this is what I'm going to have to tell John, is at what point do you classify as pass through? Is it, I've had the discovery, I've qualified them, we've booked the next call, they
Yeah.
have passed through, and then if they don't show, they're dropped there? Or is
So
it,
it's still passed through, but it's a no-show to this call.
yeah, okay, that's, yeah, no,
Right.
that's what I thought too, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's still an opportunity, even if they don't pass, even if they don't show up.
Yeah.
They're still qualified, and that's really the metric that you want. And then if they're no show, that's a different metric. So yeah, you've got your pass through metric, and then we had no show just calculated as a number of no shows over calls booked. But would you then need it a?
No, because you're going to segment it call by call, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So like there's a clear delineator here
Yeah.
between a discovery call and a sales
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
And because they'll be totally different, right? Because like this might have come in from an SDR, right? From an SDR, someone calling.
Mm-hmm.
It also might have come in from a marketing campaign.
Yeah, and
Do you know what
that's
I
where
mean?
the source becomes critical too.
It's good to know because you'll have totally different show rates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then from there, you would then have different pass-through rates, but that's been traditionally really hard to find. Is like, what's the pass-through rate per lead source? You know what I mean? Because you're just filtering through like a lot of data, right?
Yeah. And so that's where part of my challenge work with John and Andy is like, are we just straight up showing this information or are we allowing for filtering and customization?
Well, it depends on how much, I guess, the AI is going to need to see it anyway. So like whether or not, I think it
We'll
needs
have
to,
access to all of it.
I think it needs to be there.
Yeah.
But whether or not in the initial terms people have access to all of it, or whether it's more like those insights are generated for them based on like, you know, like I guess if you fed the AI like look for statistical outliers,
Yeah.
right? Then it would be able to see, oh, well, SDR has a 72% show rate and Meta has 54% show rate.
Yeah.
That's statistically significant.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting insight,
Yeah.
you know?
The way that I've been thinking about it in the background is maybe like an end of week synopsis, like, yeah, feedback on here are the insights, here's what the recommendation is. And I mean, I haven't spoken to John about this, but being able to prompt and ask, like,
Yeah.
is is where I'm thinking as well. Because my Otter that I use sometimes for like really long technical meetings or exploring a lot of different things, I put it around the background, and then, you know, 2 days later I'm like, fuck, what were we even talking about? And I go back and like, what was the outcome of this specific feature that we discussed? And it's so valuable. So I've kind of been thinking about that in the background as prompting the insights, but a deeper and more enriching experience being, I want to then be able to ask so that you can feed that back to me with the statistical numbers of relevance as well. Kind of where you have been thinking is.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So it's like there might be some things that are like just glaringly obvious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey man, like Johnny's shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So because
Yeah,
it's like, like if you've got all these people, and then if you were to have them all checked, right? But then you kind of uncheck this guy, and then everything goes up. It's like, well, that guy is dragging everyone down.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is where it links back to, remember how I said last time, being able to link things back to like the Aura rings and the whoops and stuff?
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Eventually.
Yeah.
Because like then you'd be able to see like, oh, Johnny's not sleeping. And then you could literally predict that like a week out.
Yeah.
You know, hey, last time he wasn't sleeping, there's a real issue.
Yeah.
You know? But
because what I go back and I do is I redefine the calculations and the priority of how John will calculate it, but then also how Andy will need to work to display it.
yeah, and then I think like if we break it up into, right, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then break it up into like that in terms of like, you know, so it's like 3 different distinct time periods, and then like that, because ideally like sort of, I guess what sort of got this whole thing, we started this whole thing off is like, I reckon that there would be significant difference in show up rate per time of day and show up rate per day.
Yeah,
and
but then that gets a bit challenging if it's based on the caller's time is different to the customer's time is different to the caller's time.
Well, no, because you're going to be basing it off like our stuff. Do you know what I mean? And most people are going to be in the same country.
Yeah.
Do
So
you know
the
what I mean?
variance is like hours, or a couple hours, not 12 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you could just go like, because, you know, let's just say like this is a terrible time and this is a terrible time.
Yeah.
And, you know, like let's say this is a terrible time for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Right? And if you've got, like, let's say this is money and this is money and this is money.
Yeah.
And you've got a fucking hour-long team meeting there. Yeah. What a waste of time.
Yeah,
So because if you have 10 reps and they do 1 hour slots, that's 10 hours.
Yeah.
So that one meeting,
Yeah, it's costing
if that has an 80% show rate and a 40% close rate, right? Then you've got, you know, 10 meeting slots. You've got 8, you know what I mean? So you got like 3 guaranteed closes.
Yeah.
Right? If it's $5K per close, it's $15,000 to have that meeting there when you could fucking have it here, right? Like that is, but because no one, like I track that with end of days, and I use ChatGPT, so I put the end of days in ChatGPT, and then from there I go like, hey, can you do an association of the date, convert that into the day of the week, and then give me the show rate per day of week?
Yeah.
And in a percentage form, I just get ChatGPT to do that for me.
Yeah.
And so then from there, like I make adjustments. But like I'm the only person I know that does that.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure there are people that do it, but
Yeah.
like I'm the only one that I know that does it. So if I release this video, more people will do it. But yeah, so like, but I want that to be like, you know, because if it can flag it for like good times that are being underutilized,
Yeah.
you know, that's super handy because you have the time of the day, and if you block them, whoa, I don't know, that was a thing, right? So like, because if you block them off like appropriately, you know, what was that? If you hold it, no, I don't know what that was. Anyway.
So the next layer of that will be into the prompting of AI, because the video that you shared is the framework for the prompt for AI. It's the parameters, because otherwise it'll go so broad or so general that it doesn't have value. So the more details you can feed it, the more enriched the insights are that come back. So like there's really obvious stuff like this that makes sense, but then being able to go more specific and deeper is kind of the next.
I think that's also where like having a hive mind kind of thing is helpful, because if you have 100 accounts that are on this, and everyone's seeing a similar trend of that or of that,
right? Yeah.
And all of a sudden it goes like, you know, you're asking it, how do I increase the show rate? And it goes, to be honest, the show rates are down this month, you know what I mean, across everyone that we can see.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the thing to focus on. Maybe it's just an anomaly. you know what I mean? Something like that, or you know what I mean? Or like,
and basically like you were saying about the Black Friday sales and, and election stuff.
Yeah, like are there any, you know, because at the end of like a really experienced sales manager looks at it and goes like, why would I not make a change? As opposed to why would I make a change?
Yeah.
So you have like step one is like external factors. I spoke about this in the video, I think. Are there any external factors that are causing the change, right? And is it short term, right? Like the election.
So don't just, pause.
Yeah, like the election, so the Consumer Confidence Index, right? The CCI, which you can get a live API to, right?
Yeah.
So like that, if that's trending downward, so will your show rates and close rates and stuff, generally speaking, for most things, right? So it's like because there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. So during an election, uncertainty goes up, right? Because it doesn't matter what side you're on, no one knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then from there, like if Trump wins, like red states, the CCI will skyrocket, and in blue states it'll plummet, and then vice versa, right? So sort of, you know, external factors. Then from there, it's like you've got two sort of types of changes that you can make, and you can do additive, or you can do like subtract. So it's like the problem with like constant additive measures is that like they compound into like over complex processes, and this is the one that like people never try.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? So it's like, how can I make things simpler?
Going back to, and I can't believe I haven't asked this, but where the people that you have sold to so far, the company that you have, they're US based, right? Is this largely going to be US based companies with US based customers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part.
Cool.
Be cool to have like an insights, like economic, because the real things that like, for example, like if somebody uses funding, I could probably predict their revenue ups and downs based on interest rates, right? So there are usually like 5 economic factors that really affect a business, called like a 5 forces model. You can look that up.
Yeah.
But like, for example, like if somebody does funding, so in the States you can borrow for anything, right? You can borrow for a fucking fitness package. As terrible as an idea as that is, they do it in Australia as well. Business called Pay Right. So you'll get like, you know, it's a $5,000 offer, and they predominantly the people put like say $500 down, and they borrow $4,500, right? That business gets paid, you know, $3,500 plus the 5, so they make $4K. And then the lending company makes $1,000 profit, but it's extended out over time, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like they're financing it.
Yeah.
So, but what happens is like you're the interest rate, right? Like the actual like the Fed interest rate will play a huge role in that. And then there are usually anywhere from 2 to 4 different factors that will go up and down, right? The first is like debt to equity ratio is one.
Yeah.
So like I figured out when they brought debt to equity ratio in, I figured out that basically I said, hey, we're not to offer funding to any males between the age of 29 and 40. And everyone was like, why? I was like, don't fucking worry about it. Just don't do it. I'm not allowed to. Like, don't do it. So like because they brought in debt to equity ratio. So usually speaking, it's going to be, that's when a man is going to like buy their family home, and they haven't had time to pay any of it off yet.
Yeah.
So their debt to equity ratio is shit. So it's like they're never going to get approved.
Yeah.
Right? Then it's income, and then it's like income verification, and then there's like credit score. Do you know what I mean? So like, but like the overall interest rate and then inflation rate. Like inflation kills a lot of offers, and they don't really realize it. So like if the interest rate of a state and the inflation rate are going up significantly, the fucking efficacy of the sales in that state are going to drop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's just a fact of life that people don't even think about, but it really is a massive thing, because like their money doesn't go as far, and you're asking them to buy something which is not required.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I don't know how much of that we want to go into, probably none of it at the moment, but it's just like those are all factors that I would think of if I'm going to make like a significant change. So maybe if someone's like maybe there's some sort of thing is like, hey, if you're, there's some sort of like, you can see they're scrambling, I don't know, like, you know, it's like, hey, like maybe there's like a ask for help, and it's like, just consider these factors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a product, that's where it comes into how much we want to refine that and bring that in for the like feeding in those sales manager insights, versus like even having like a public opinion or like a business opinion that can be fed.
Probably like if you do like a CRO, like a next thing is like, you know, the chief sales officer CRO edition, which is like $1,000 a month. Because like just for like Statista, it's $400 a month.
Yeah.
And like Statista just gives you access to the data.
Yeah.
Right? Which you can like feed onto a fucking thingy bob.
Yeah, well that's the other layer of this is if you have enough companies and users in there feeding enough data, then you can create value in that data.
Yeah.
Right? That you can then either sell or make accessible to certain people.
Yeah.
Which I could imagine would be really appealing to like those CRO positions.
Yeah, exactly. That is, I think, would be great. I don't know, like that's filtering, right? I guess in the background, like if you're filtering per block and then per day, you know, and it's like, I don't know if that's super possible, but whether or not you go like, hey, listen, like 8 to 11 is block A, right? And then it's like 11 to 1 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like 8 to 12, 12 to 3 and whatever. They're put into blocks so you could filter per block because like that is, when it comes to optimizing your sales team, that is really, really, really useful information.
Yeah.
You know, like the show rates and all that kind of stuff, you can calculate all that shit with a fucking spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Right? And I think what we want to do is we want to make sure that we can give the simple stuff that you can get with a spreadsheet, but the whole point of this is to be able to break this stuff down further, you know what I mean? Without having like too much trouble. Whereas like to get this at the moment is not easy.
Yeah, no, but that's the value, right?
Yeah,
Perfect.
you know? So this is where it came from, which is like being able to have some of this insight. Because if you really realize that like this is just garbage time, then don't use it.
Yeah.
You know, see what happens when you add an extra hour down here, right? Like what happens there?
Yeah.
Let's start at 8 instead of 9.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there are some interesting insights. You know, there's a couple of accounts where guys are doing 10 calls in a row. Like, I guarantee you, if you looked at it, their last 4 calls, they never close a single thing. Like, it's a giant waste of time, right? Which is sort of like common sense, but people don't think about it. You know, so you know, again, if you can break down the close rate and you can filter it per day per person, and you're like, well, these fucking dudes, like, they don't close anything here, so maybe, you know, you have to split it up in a certain way, because some guys will just go ballistic and they'll do 12 closing calls a day, 6 days a week, and it's like, what are you, like, are you actually effective? Yeah. And the overall numbers might look all right, but they're not really, you know what I mean? Like, there has to be a time where like you're like, hey, calm the fuck down.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful. That's given me a lot. It's a good challenge, for sure, because it's not just about the calculation is actually really straightforward. It's more the visualization, which is getting it all into a single system where it makes sense and it isn't like, I don't know, but that's where I work with John and Andy, trying with them. Yeah. Because even if you did have a calendar like this and it was broken up like this and this is what you saw and you had like, you know what I mean? And then you could see like what happens when I turn different things on and off. Yeah. Like if we had that in the background that we could fuck around with as like a dev version of it. Yeah. Even if it was ugly, but it was like, oh shit, like look at the closes, they're all here. Yeah. You know? It's like, oh well that's interesting. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then it's like, oh look at the no-shows, they're all like, you know, here. And does it vary by, like, you've been doing this for so long, do you have your like general rules around? My general rules are Monday morning and Friday afternoon suck. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Generally speaking, but again, like it is not always. Yeah. You know, so, but in generally speaking, like you don't want people taking too many calls in a row. Like if someone's taking 7 calls in a row, I'd flag that. Yeah. Be like, hey, like what are you doing, mate? Like that's silly, you know? Yeah. Generally speaking, like from like a numbers perspective, just for like scalability reasons, you kind of want to have like certain, you know, you sort of want to have like, you know, a show rate of 65%, right? You want to be upwards of that. If it's below that, it's an issue. If it's at or above that, it's probably not your biggest lever to move. Do you know what I mean? You've got like 35% as a close rate of calls held, like closed from held, is like pretty good. If you're way above that, you're either over filtering or too cheap. Right? If you're way under that, there can be a number of different reasons, right? Which could be intentional or because people suck or whatever. But if you have like 45% plus close rate, you're too cheap. Yeah. Or you're over filtering. So like I can say like, that's a flag for me. Yeah. If an offer's closing at 60%, I'd be like, what are you doing? Like why? Like what's your cost of acquisition? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like what is this? Why don't we get this down to 35% but like 2x the amount of calls booked? Yeah. Right? Which then will result in a drop of close rate, and then I shouldn't freak out about the drop in close rate. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I can do things to... Close rate's a lagging indicator, you know? Yeah. It's like no metric, right? Well, it's a lagging indicator because I can fuck with it up here. You know what I mean? So like it's important to know, but you're not gonna make a ton of decisions off it. You're gonna look at it and then see what decisions led to it being that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because if I like open the floodgates with every Tom, Dick and Harry, the close rate will go down. Yeah.
And if I make it really, really targeted in my marketing rate, the close rate will.
Yeah.
If I have a really high value product that is cheap as fuck when it should be, you know, this many expensive, right? Then the close rate's gonna be high because it's a fucking hell of a deal,
Yeah.
right? You know? So like, so many factors go into if that close rate, to be honest, the skill of the person is sort of nearly here nor there. Like I can take an amazing closer who's really highly skilled and I can dump the ass out of their close rate and vice versa. Obviously the better somebody is, the more they'll close, right? But again, it's not like the be all and end all, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably enough for me to go back and then reprioritize and relook at these calculations, because I think I've included maybe things that are a bit like less valuable and rudimentary. But yeah. And can I get the
Yeah,
video?
I'll upload it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That would be great. Thank you so much.